Tim Cook's retirement, WeChat revenue, and App Store guidelines. This is MacVoices. MacVoices is supported by Incogni. Take your personal data back with Incogni. Get 60% off an annual plan at incogni.com/Chuck and use the code Chuck at checkout. All right, well, I don't want Mark Fuccio to fall asleep, so we're just going to dive right into the big story of the evening. And that is all this talk and rumor and everything that's been swirling around about Tim Cook's retirement. I almost didn't want to touch this because there were so many different interpretations. There were so many different things. The allegation is that internally the board has stepped up its succession planning. And then there was another article, I think it was MG Siegler, put out something that was questioning whether this was a trial balloon to see how the markets would react. And there were articles about Tim's going to retire in 2026, and there were others that were saying Tim's not going to retire anytime soon, or that he's going to take an executive position on the board to deal with foreign affairs and the current administration. I mean, you name it. It was all over the place. So it's going to happen at some point. But I don't know if there's anything conclusive here. And I'll give Mark the first word since he brought it up. Mark, without going on for too long, do you think there's any real basis here, or is this just another one of those things that hit one website and just took off like wildfire?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think there were stories, if I recall, over the summer about when Tim Cook would retire. So at some point he has to do it. I think they said this year or early next year, he turned 65, which is sort of a customary retirement age. So, I suspect there's a little bit of truth to it. And, then we know the hype machines, and people can drum up all sorts of stories about it. And there's some things they're talking about, they want to see this other guy, Turnos, there, and, they want to do it, and they're bored, and they have problems with the board because other board members are older, or they've had dispensation over the maximum board retirement ages. So you can spin up all sorts of fact-based fiction. And right now, I think until it happens, everyone's just speculating.
Yeah, that's kind of what I feel about it. Anybody else have any thoughts on this?
Sure.
Sure. Okay. Okay, Jeff, this should be interesting.
Probably not, actually. Okay. Any company that has leadership, which should be every company.
Okay, I'm with you so far.
Webb's with me so far. Has a succession plan, and Webb, I'm sure for your company there is a succession plan, which will cover things from what if your CEO has a catastrophic accident tomorrow, like falls on the sidewalk, run over by a bus. What do? There's a succession plan in place. And so you have your short-term, your mid-term, and your long-term succession plans. And these are going to be evolving basically all the time. And so maybe Apple is working on shuffling around, refining their current succession plan, and that is what's drumming up these rumors. Or maybe they've been doing some like tabletop succession games, if you will, where they work through some of the processes, see if everything is going to operate the way they expect it to, or maybe Tim is working on gracefully extracting himself from the role. It could be anything.
Agreed. Marty?
Yeah, this is a Rorschach test for media writers. They're going to see this hint of something going on, and then they're going to interpret it in whatever way that kind of suits their concepts or their ideas or whatever can give them more clicks in terms of it. The only person that knows about Tim Cook's retirement is Tim Cook. And that's in, and all of the stuff that I've read Tim hasn't said anything about it. So part of me is like, yeah, this is interesting news. At the same time, it's just kind of feeding this media frenzy around whatever the author wants to project on as what's going on without really knowing what's going on.
I
Filling
like that.
column inches, meeting a quota, trying to get those clicks.
Yeah. Well, and Marty, I kind of like it because that would explain the range of angles that I saw this story taking, that everybody was just jumping on it from every angle you can think of. Eric?
I still think that there are several possible timings. So my guess would, if nothing else happened, late somewhere around January 2027 ish is when he would normally kind of think about it. However, government right now is not exactly what's the term? Predictable.
What is the term? Yeah.
It's not predictable, right? And there's a lot of stuff that Apple has ended up doing that not everybody has been happy with regard to how do you try to not have as many tariffs levied against you, or how to reduce the effect, or whatever. And right now, a lot of that seems to be tied pretty clearly to Tim Cook directly, as opposed to Apple in general. So I think if at any moment there's a tiny bit more of a backlash, he can remove himself from Apple to remove whatever that issue is, that conflict, because it really wouldn't affect him, and then Apple could go on with somebody else. I think playing that card too soon might mean that a new person is stuck doing things that perhaps are not entirely popular with Apple buying public. And right now he still can get things done. The second or the other thing is that he may be just trying to wait until they finally release Apple Intelligence in Marchish, Aprilish of next year, because then he will have made it through his original promise, and then he can quickly get out before people have a chance to try it.
I think that's a little harsh, that last comment, Eric.
It could be good though, right?
Yeah.
That's
That's what I'm saying. We don't know either way. That's what I'm saying. I think that last phrase was a little harsh.
I guess I didn't mean it in a harsh way. I meant it as it could get released, it could be taken, and then where the direction goes from there could be whoever's next. It doesn't have to be Tim Cook. And then that gives the new person they can pave their own way, kind of the same way that Steve said, "You are not me."
Right. And like Warren Buffett is liquidating everything and he's handing it over to his successor. So he has a clean slate to show what he can do. I think I agree with you. Well, I don't know. We'll see what happens in the Apple case.
Yeah. I guess there's something to be said for what'd you say, Mark? A clean slate. But there's also, this is a company. It's not a family dynasty, and so is that a responsible way to look at it from a shareholder perspective? That we want to wipe off the decks so that the new guy can put things in place, or are we
who's saying that? I think Eric was saying that he's interpreting Cook might leave at some point once Apple Intelligence goes out. And then, the commitments are things going forward. I don't think he's implying and correct me if I'm wrong, Eric,
No.
I don't think he's implying any other deeper level of change happens, before the successor CEO comes on board.
Yeah, I don't look. This is all just random speculation, because whoever said it, Marty, Eric, I think you were the one who said only Tim Cook knows, what Tim Cook's thinking. So we'll see.
Right.
We'll see, but it's sure to get a lot of people's attentions. I'll tell you that.
Can I add something here?
Oh, absolutely, Webb, please.
Yeah.
I will guarantee you there will be another CEO at Apple Computer. No doubt about that. Okay.
What are your odds?
And
Well,
I think
spoken.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
let me finish,
Webb,
please.
Is that why you wore a suit and tie today?
Oh, yeah. I am applying for the job. I'll take it. That's another story. But I think one of the things that we fall into sometimes is we think that you ever see the movie The Founder, the movie about Ray Kroc and founding of McDonald's?
Yes.
And it came down to, as part of it, is that you think you're in the hamburger business, but you're not. You're actually in the real estate business.
Yeah.
Okay. We're looking at Tim Cook. We think Apple is a product company. Apple sells products. Apple is not a product company, because they also have services. They're very widespread. So you got to keep. I think we got to keep this in perspective too. Will Tim Cook retire? It's depending on when you're counting, it's the number one, number two, or number three largest corporation in the world. He's been CEO now for a little over 10 years. It's okay for him to say, "Hey, I think I want to stop and smell the roses for a little bit." He's earned that. Okay. We always get into speculating. Well, who's going to be his successor? Is it going to be Federighi? Is it going to be Jaws? Is it going to be this person or that person? Who was the guy who just left? Phil Williams? No.
Jeff Williams.
Jeff Williams. Yeah. And he was kind of my pick, just because and we talked about this 3 or 4 weeks ago on this show, and Jim Rea, you kind of talked about. Remember, Tim Cook is not an engineer. Steve Jobs wasn't an engineer, but we're always talking about the engineering of their products. So anyway, I it's going to take somebody who has a much broader perspective. That's why I don't think Federighi is going to be the successor. He's a great engineer. He's great at what he does. But trying to run a multinational organization is not for the faint of heart. So it's going to be very, very difficult for whoever the next person is. There was a story that I'm going to do this real quick, but it's going to be a little boring to everybody. When J. Edgar Hoover left the FBI the way he left, he died. There was a gentleman by the name of Clarence Kelly who took over for the FBI. Okay, Clarence Kelly was the chief of police for Kansas City, Missouri, and he'd been with the FBI before that. So, and he was very well liked in Kansas City as the chief of police. Now I'm talking, 70, 68, somewhere in that time frame. And one of the things that they said was that whoever's going to take Clarence Kelly's place as the chief of the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department, that's going to be a tough act to follow because of the way the predecessor. So, my point here is that when Tim Cook decides to leave, either by choice or by proxy, however he leaves, I'm going to feel sorry for that next guy, because it's going to be hard for that next guy to really, to fill those shoes, to take that seat. I think you need there's going to be a shock. That you need to find somebody who's going to stabilize the ship, because if they don't stabilize, then everybody's going to think, "Oh no, Tim's gone. We're going to go down in flames." So I like I said, I think the next guy, and doesn't need to be a much younger guy. It doesn't need to be somebody that you think is going to have a 10, 15-year tenure as the next president and CEO. I think it could be another 5-year guy, and then you can start looking, to stabilize. Then you can bring on somebody who probably has a little bit longer term vision to it. So that's kind of my thing. I'll just leave it at that. I think Tim Cook's done some amazing things in this position, and being the successor to Steve Jobs, that's a tough act to follow, and he's done it very well.
Yeah.
So building on that, how long was it, take before people recognized CEO, Tim Cook, made valuable contributions on his own and stopped comparing him to Steve or what would Steve do? And
I think he's gotten past that.
I know, but my question is, how long did it take? It wasn't 1 or 2 years. It was maybe a dozen or half dozen, or I'm not quite sure what. But he was in Steve's
way
shadow
less than
for
a
quite a
dozen.
while.
Yeah, and look, I don't know that whoever is at the helm of Apple is ever going to get completely past Steve Jobs. I mean, as long as our generations are around, the generations that saw the Jobs years, eventually he'll fall into, no matter how much of a legend he is, he will fall into the past. But for us, he's still very much a person. He's not a myth or a name in the history books. So I think that Tim has done a super admirable job about respecting the whole Jobs Cook has done a really great job of respecting the Jobs mystique and even playing off of it at the right times in the right ways. Now somebody's going to have to come in and play off not only that mystique as it fades, but also Tim's mystique. Because while he may not have the same personality, he definitely has a mystique.
I one time had the benefit of going to the executive briefing center on the not the spaceship campus, but the previous campus, which is a briefing center that they have. I was there because of my college affiliation, and they had Steve Jobs quotes in big text on all the walls, all over the place, just things that he said. And yeah, my point is, I'm agreeing with you. That's kind of difficult for someone to come in because they're constantly reminded of Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs' office is still there and hasn't been touched. I'm sure they go in and clean it and dust it, do all that other kind of stuff. But yeah, I feel sorry for the next guy. I don't think it's going to be a failure. I don't want to put that out there, but it's going to be it's going to be tough because now you're being compared to 2 guys and not just one. So,
yeah, good point.
I don't feel sorry for him in advance. You know what? I think that at this point they will be compared more to Tim than Steve. I think Steve is pretty far in the rear view mirror at this point. And yeah, his office is still there in the old building a couple miles down the road. So yeah, I think, it's been what, 15 years? That's longer than Steve was
exactly
CEO. So yeah, I think people will be comparing the next person to Tim Cook and not so much to Jobs.
Well, Barry in the chat room, and I agree, Barry, completely, says there are still people who play the Steve Jobs wouldn't have done it that way card. And that's the part that I think is still going to be with us until a certain generation or generation and a half die out.
You hardly hear that anymore.
Oh, yeah. I think we hear it quite a bit.
We hear it a lot.
You may, I don't. And usually if somebody does, they're like, come on, get real, it's 2025.
Exactly. At this point, Steve wouldn't have done that. I feel it's a straw man argument. And the people that I see spouting that, and I know I'm doing some generalization here, but the people that I see spouting that most often are people that never moved on from the idea of what Apple was to them, probably even before Steve Jobs really had risen back to his top game in Apple. And I think in many cases it's used not really in the sense of well, if Steve Jobs is here, that wouldn't have happened. It's their way of saying, I don't like what's happening. This isn't the Apple that I want.
Yeah, I think they're inserting their opinion into Steve's mouth.
Oh yeah.
And they're not, first of all, you don't know what Steve would have done, especially 15 years later.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Because well, not only has the company changed, but the world has changed.
Yeah.
In a radical way.
And he would have changed.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And he certainly did very often.
Yeah. It would have been fun to see just what would have happened if he had remained at the helm for an extended period of time.
But we wouldn't have known it was fun.
Right. Yeah.
And he was there for an extended period of time. I mean,
well, more extended than he was, Jim.
Yeah.
So we live in a world where personal information is more accessible than ever, sometimes a little too accessible. Data brokers collect and sell your private details, your name, home address, phone number, even your browsing habits, without you ever knowing. That's where Incogni comes in. It works behind the scenes to remove your data from those databases, reducing your exposure to marketers, scammers, and anyone else who might use it without your consent. Your privacy should be yours to control. Take back your information with Incogni today. Using Incogni feels like finally reclaiming your personal space. No more random calls, no more data breaches, just peace. You don't have to email anyone, fill out forms, or jump through hoops. They handle the entire data removal process for you. It doesn't just do that and walk away. Incogni also continuously monitors if your data is put back onto those databases, requesting repeated removals, keeping your data yours forever. So you get way less spam calls, spam emails, and get more peace of mind. Incogni are also so thorough, they go after all kinds of data brokers, marketing firms, credit companies, people search sites, recruitment data brokers, any sort of medical or police information, you name it. If they've got your info, Incogni is coming for it. You're covered in all areas. Right now, you can get 60% off their annual plans by heading to incogni.com/Chuck and using the code Chuck at checkout. It's also completely risk-free. Incogni offers a 30-day money-back guarantee if you're not satisfied with them removing your personal information off the internet. Live free from dangerous spam by using Incogni. That's incogni.com/Chuck for 60% off their annual plans. Right now, you can get 60% off an annual plan by going to incogni.com and use the code Chuck. That's incogni.com/Chuck and use the code Chuck at checkout. Thanks to Incogni for supporting MacVoices. Next story is Webb and Mark. I may point you guys to this one. Apple could, and I usually don't do could, would, those kind of things, but this one is Apple could make billions of dollars of commission from WeChat. And after I read the article, it's like, okay, I don't know about the billions, but it made sense because the WeChat app apparently is used in Asia, specifically China, as almost an all-in-one app, including purchases made through that. And there's been a deal negotiated that Apple gets a piece of that action of anything bought through there. And yeah, it could be billions. So I applaud someone for, at Apple for making this deal, because this could be monumental. So I don't know if either one of you gentlemen or anyone has had a chance to look at this or.
But I thought today it was announced that there wasn't a deal.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. Okay. I didn't see that.
They're just applying for the program that Apple already has in place. There's no special deal Apple is swinging with them.
Well, already as of like 4 days ago.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
The long running program from last Thursday.
Fair.
Okay, then.
And it's very possible this program exists because Apple needed to figure out how to address the whole WeChat thing, and they're like, let's make a new program.
Okay,
Well-
then I withdraw it because I did not see anything that made it sound like that particular article made it sound like it was a done deal.
When they originally wrote the article, that's how they did
coverage
it.
has changed.
Yeah.
And it's all very puzzling because what's Apple's leverage here? Apple is not going to remove WeChat from iOS devices. That's not happening. They're not going to pull what's the heck's that name of that game company for
Fortnite?
suing
Yeah.
Fortnite. Yeah, Apple's not going to pull a Fortnite and remove WeChat. That this is a too big to fail situation. So, I saw some speculation that there was some sort of deal with the Chinese government because, basically it seems like unless the CCP ordered WeChat to do this, there's no way it would happen. So I think, this is a developing story that, I don't know. It could be that Apple, because it seems that this whole program that Apple announced last week was like basically just intended at WeChat. That was the purpose of it. But I can't see how, they could possibly unilaterally impose these terms and say, you've got to give us billions of dollars because, WeChat could just take their ball and go home and Apple will not be selling iOS devices in China anymore.
Stay tuned then. And I apologize for missing today's coverage because when I read this, it's like, pardon me, I know Musk had talked about, trying to develop sort of one of those, an all-in-one kind of app that would be the basis for pretty much everything you do on your phone, the way apparently WeChat is in China. So it's intriguing, and there was an article today, and I didn't have it in the queue, but that one out of every four, is I have that right? 1 out of every 4 phones sold in China is an iPhone.
That's a lot of iPhones.
That's a lot of iPhones.
But it's also a lot of not iPhones.
Yeah, I was about to say a lot of others too.
Yeah, but 25% of everything is still a pretty big number.
I've never been to China, but my understanding is that every one of those iPhones and every one of those not iPhones has WeChat on it. Mm-hmm. And that basically cannot exist in China without WeChat. So yeah, again, that's what I'm saying. Apple, WeChat's bigger than Apple in China. So I don't see where Apple has any leverage to impose their will on WeChat.
Yeah, working with Chinese internationals, eventually when they were coming over, they all wanted to know about WeChat and can we do WeChat, etc. It was primarily just a chat app, just like WhatsApp and Messenger, iMessage, and all of that.
They also do payments through it.
It's evolved. Yeah, it's evolved since then. It's when it first was developed, it was just a simple national app that they were using to chat with. I guess international too, but it was just what the title says, WeChat.
Yeah.
And then it's got all this other new stuff in it.
If I remember correctly, Alex Lindsay, and this has been a few years ago, talked a lot about as he was working with some of the African nations that they virtually did everything with their phones. Now, not necessarily through WeChat or through a specific app, but I thought maybe it was something that had become a bit more centralized there too. So this is not
in that case. It's in with African nations. It's access to laptops, portable computers, tablets like we have here, because I worked with a lot of Africans. And yeah, for where they are, for for the locations that they're in and the different countries that they're in, phones make a lot of sense for the computing.
Yeah. Mark, I think you were waving.
Yeah, I was just going to, ask if, anyone here on the panel thought that, some editor at that website juiced up a really sexy title, based on the story that had some rumors and not very good reporting. And here we are, taking our valuable time discussing something that may turn out to be just a brain fart.
Yeah. When we could be talking about Tim Cook rumors.
Well, Marty, he
talking
posted
about Tim Cook rumors too. Yes.
Chuck posted a link, but that story's been all over the place. And B, Apple definitely announced this program last week, and I said Thursday, but I'm not sure. It might have been Wednesday, whatever. Like I got an email from Apple. I'm on their list. I get, so, they definitely announced this program for, plug-in apps. And, I remember when I got that announcement before I saw any coverage. I got it directly from Apple, and I looked at it and I'm like, what? And then I started seeing coverage about WeChat, and I was like, okay. But then I got more puzzled later, because it's like, well, it's not like Apple's going to be able to, impose this. I mean, I could see Apple looking at all that revenue and saying, they do it everywhere else. They're like, oh yeah, revenue involving our device, that's ours. But I WeChat's going to be like, yeah, nah.
So Jim, I saw that too, and the little bit I dug into, it seemed that they were saying it needs to be things that were based on HTML5 and JavaScript, but basically that's everything on the open web. So I don't understand how they would think that they could have any control over that. I think they would like to. I think maybe that's the whole dilemma here, is they would like to plug this hole where they think they're leaking an opportunity to get revenue. But if it's just something you click on a website and it comes on down, Apple can't police the entire web. So that's why I'm thinking.
But I think maybe that's how WeChat works. With it has plugins that are HTML/JavaScript based.
Right.
Although I don't know, but that would kind of make sense.
Okay, I suspect that the backroom discussion was that you're leaking things here, and this is against our terms of service, and we really don't want to try to have a mutual assured description where we blow each other up. Why don't we come out with this other much more friendly program, and maybe we could work something out? And I think that's what rolled out. And again, for most things, I don't think it makes sense because as they say, the horse is out of the barn.
I'll throw one other thing in, then Jeff, I want to get your comment. We don't know what's in the terms of service for WeChat or for the iPhone in China. And so in any of the mix of terms of service, is there something that says any transactions like there is here in the US, any transactions that go through this, we get a piece of the action? I don't know. That's pure speculation, but I haven't seen that written up anywhere. I do want to say too, though, that this headline and this whole discussion is an object lesson in why you need to look at everything and maybe do some follow-up before you pass judgment. And that's my fault. So I'm owning that. Jeff?
Okay, so I'm bringing a hypothesis. I know, big surprise. And it's about how this article came to be. And keep in mind, I haven't interacted with anyone at the website to talk about what they're doing. But
speculation noted.
All right, so here we go. The news hit that Apple and WeChat were going to do a thing. Everyone scrambles because they got to get their article out, because you need to keep eyes on your site so that you get your clicks. And that's just business. So my guess is that they ran with the basic information that they had, and no one did any research to see if they could get additional information before running with a piece, because because you got to have an article up right now. And so then that led to what happened here, where then someone does actually get the rest of the info. They write a thing about it. And now you have all these other sites that were just scrambling to get their piece up, having to do some form of mea culpa. And that's what we have here.
Fair point. Fair point. I'm going to predict that this next article is not going to satisfy much of anybody, and it may be a long time coming, but at least it's happening, that Apple is tightening the app review guidelines to try to crack down on copycat apps.
Great. That means my WeChat app is dead before it even starts.
We're sorry, Jeff.
Yeah. Story of my life.
Back to the hot dogs and beans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess a lot of people are saying about time. It's about time.
Yeah, I'm sure. And look, that probably includes a lot of us, because there are some things out there that look awfully blatant. So I think it'll be.
I guess the question is, the devil's in the details and how it's implemented. If they do it right, great. But I'm waiting for the stories now of where they ban the original developer and keep the copies in.
Mm-hmm.
That'll happen sooner or later.
I'm sure it'll happen.
Yeah. Brian?
Yeah, that was alluded to earlier. I'm kind of surprised on the aspect of, why now? Seems like something that could have and should have been done, a while back from the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, there are going to be mistakes made. There are going to be problems, but it also feels like it is way overdue. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.